The hardest thing I've ever had to do in youth ministry is kick a student out of my ministry. And the thing I probably would go back and do it differently was not kicking a student out from camp. Both happened with the same two students. Hey, my name is Eric with a K, and this is the Practical Youth Ministry Tips podcast. I'm glad you're here. Here's the deal. Discipline in youth ministry is a really difficult, fine line to figure out because it's not like we can send students to the principal's office and let the principal deal with it, right? We're the principal. We're the ones that have to deal with the situation. And they're not required to show up at our ministry. They show up because they want to, or their parents have made them, or for whatever reason. But it's not like school where they have to be there and they have to stay in line. And if they don't stay in line, you can just send them to the principal's office.
Report to the principal's office.
So we, as youth pastors, as leaders in youth ministry, we have to have a plan. And it took me a long time to come to the place where I had a plan. And I want to get to the plan in a minute, but I want to tell you the story about these two students. We had a spring or fall retreat, and these two boys, Sean and Jared, had pushed the boundaries, particularly Jared, and pushed the boundaries like on everything. We're constantly challenging me, constantly not doing what they're supposed to do. And I had gotten to a point where I was like, we can't do it anymore. And I had those conversations, like I felt like I had good rapport with them. And then I found out that they were going to moon the girls at some point. And I was like, I went in there and I said, that's not happening. This is not happening. And I shut it down. Turns out they did. I went and had a conversation with them because I told them, I warned them. And I did not send them home from camp. Jared was the one who pushed even harder. And if I were to go back again now, years later, I probably would have sent them home. That wouldn't have been easy. I wasn't, I think, bold enough, if you will, or strong enough in what I was saying. And I feel like it was kind of like the parents who I see in the stores, right, the couple of weeks before Christmas, that are yelling at the kids, if you don't stop this, you're not getting any Christmas gifts. Don't touch that or you're not going to get Christmas gifts. It's an empty threat.
We have a saying about people who make empty threats.
And I feel like that's how that played out because I didn't follow through in what I said I was going to do. It became an empty threat. Now, on the flip side of that, Jared and Sean again, Jared was in my small group. Actually, both of them were in my small group. And Jared had been pushing in small group over and over, and he was being completely disrespectful. And I finally told him, I said, dude, if you can't stop, we're going to call your mom to come pick you up. He goes, I don't care. Call her. And he kept pushing. And at one point, I said, let's go outside. Let's have a conversation. I tried to sit with him. I tried to talk with him. I had lots of strategies, like both him and Sean I'd taken out and talked to them about the behavior and the expectations and all that stuff. Jared was just in a tough place. And I remember this one night, I took him outside and I said, dude, you're killing me in here. You're completely disrupting what we're trying to do with our small group. The other guys are being completely distracted. I really believe God wants to say something to our group, but you're pushing everything about you. And he goes, I don't care. I said, okay. I said, then we need to call your mom. And so I said, do not go riding on your skateboard. I want you to sit right here. And I go call his mom, and she's leading a Bible study. And I come back out and he's riding his skateboard. He didn't care. I was furious. And his mom came, we had a conversation and agreed that he needed to take a break. But here's what I said. I said I'd be willing to, and I followed up on phone calls, followed up with a visit with Jared. Jared didn't want anything to do with me. I was the bad guy. It was all my fault in his eyes. And I said I'd be willing if he wanted to do a one-on-one Bible study for a month, but he wanted nothing to do with me. And that was such a sad story to me because I love Jared. He was a great kid as far as like I liked being around him. He was just making these poor choices on a regular basis to the point where I had to remove him for a while, for a season. Well, he didn't come back. He never came back. And that was in middle school. He was 8th grade, I think. And I remember, I believe it was his senior year of high school. God had gotten a hold of his heart in just a crazy upside down, inside out, turnaround way. And he came and visited me in my office, and he apologized for how he had behaved and how he had treated me. He said, Eric, you were totally in the right. I was completely in the wrong. It was the right thing to kick me out. I was just angry. I was dealing with stuff, and I put my anger on you, and it wasn't fair. And he apologized. And I'm like, of course, I forgive you. And it was pretty amazing. And it was, I believe, the next year, Jared had been snowboarding, got in an accident, and he ended up dying in that snowboarding accident. And at his funeral, he had said for quite a while, when I die, I don't want people to wear black and be all sad. I want people to wear bright neon pink, and I want it to be a party. And I want to say my memory is a little foggy because it's quite a number of years ago, but there was 1,000 people at the funeral, and hundreds of bright neon pink shirts covered that whole auditorium. Students had made it, and he had a phrase. There was a phrase on it, something like "all about Jesus" or something to that effect. And I wore one at his funeral, and several of his closest guy friends went out that day after the funeral, and they got the same tattoo that he had on his foot because he was a soccer player, and he wanted it to be clear when he played barefoot that it was all about Jesus. And so these guys all were inspired to go do the same thing, which was the whole thing was really beautiful. And I know Jared is in heaven having an amazing time living fully for Jesus. And I can't wait to sit with him and just love on him and talk to him and just find great joy in that new life when I'm in heaven as well. Yeah, that was a great turnaround. Now, Sean was one of my worship leaders as a middle schooler, and he was really good, super talented kid. And I remember he was leading worship one Sunday, did a great job, gets off stage, I come up to speak, and during my entire message, Sean is talking to people all around him. He's throwing stuff at people. He's a complete and utter distraction. And I'm like, what? I wanted to wring his neck. I'm like, what in the world are you doing? Like, and I'm shooting lasers at him as I'm speaking, but he's not picking it up what I'm putting down. And I grabbed Sean afterwards and I said, hey, Sean, can we go, I think it was McDonald's, and go get a $1 Coke or whatever. So we went out that week and we sat down, and over a soda, I talked to him about my perspective and my experience that Sunday and how difficult it was for him being on stage, leading worship, helping bring people before the throne of God, and then all of a sudden he comes and goes, I'm just going to distract everything and it's going to be about me. And I said, I feel like there's something going on that you're not focused on Jesus and your relationship with him. You're focused really on you. And the crazy thing is, 13 years old, probably 13 years old, he goes, you're absolutely right. I'm wrestling with some stuff. And he started unpacking that. And I said, Sean, I think maybe you need to take a month where you're not leading. And he goes, that's totally fair. I said, but I want to meet with you on a regular basis. So we did. And Sean came back in a totally different place and led worship. Matter of fact, years later, Sean took the middle school pastor position that I had at that church.
That's my job.
And did that. I believe he was the middle school pastor for 7 years. And now at that same church, he's the college pastor, which is just awesome. I got to do his wedding for him and his wife, Jill. I've stayed at his house with him and his whole family with his two boys. Like, just this crazy, awesome journey I've got to watch Sean. We still stay super connected. And it all, I believe, a lot of that had to do with that moment for him going, this is kind of a wake-up call for you, because it cannot be all about you. The thing was, I didn't have a process back then for discipline. I just kind of I went by how I felt. Since then, and I want to attribute this to my good friend Kurt Johnson out at Saddleback. He turned me on to the 6 R's of discipline. I've changed it to the 8 R's, if you will. And I want to walk through those 8 R's and help you to have some tools. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you the free download of these 8 R's. Link is in the description down below, and you can have it, adapt it. I'm going to put it in a Word document so you can take it and adapt it for your own ministry. Change the verbiage if you want. Put your student ministry name in it. However you want to adapt that to your ministry. But this has been a super helpful template. And what's important is communicating this with your volunteers, helping your students to understand that there's a process when it comes to students stepping out of line and having behavioral issues. Now, I do want to say a blanket statement. Every situation is going to be different. So you have to work through with each situation. There's going to be students who have behavioral issues. There's going to be students who have trauma. There's going to be students who have mental health issues. Be students who may not be able to process everything. So there has to be case by case. So this is a generic disciplinary process that I've used that I feel like has worked really well. Again, that I've stolen most of it from my friend Kurt. So I want to walk you through the 8 R's. The first R is an overarching R, and that is respect. It is all about respect. And I talk to students on a regular basis, especially when we go to the message. I'll talk about, for this next 10 to 15 minutes or whatever the amount of time is, I'm going to ask that you put your phones away. I'm going to ask that you don't bother your neighbors. Would you respect yourself enough to do that? Would you respect the people around you enough? And would you respect the person who's coming to bring this message, who's poured time and effort and energy into this message that we believe God has for us today? Would you be respectful? And so the overarching R is respect. Then we move into the 7 steps from there. So the first R is request. Now, this is you approaching a student and requesting that they change their behavior, letting them know that they're having an inappropriate or improper behavior, and be very specific as to what behavior you believe is inappropriate or improper for that setting. Let them know, hey, I'm going to request that you stop this. The next time I talk to you will be my last warning, and I don't want to have that. So here's my request, that you change this behavior, or this behavior stops. That's the first R. The second R is requesting again. Now, you've given them their first warning. This is their final warning. And you let them know, hey, I already asked you once to change your behavior, this specific behavior. This is my last warning. The next time I'm coming to sit by you. Okay? So I'm going to ask, let's not do that. Would you please stop doing what you're doing? Now, you're going to get all sorts of like, it wasn't me. What? They know. And they'll complain to the parents if whatever, I got in trouble. It wasn't me. But they know. So that's the second one. The third R is reseat. And what that means is you are reseating yourself as a leader. Whoever, whether it's you or another leader in your ministry, is going to reseat themselves next to or near the student who has already had their 2 requests to change their behavior. And this is a big deal, okay? Because after your service is over, you're going to have a conversation with that student and let them know that doesn't happen again. It's inappropriate. It's not okay to have that kind of behavior. They already had 2 conversations, and then that was the final warning, and then you came and you reseated yourself right next to them so that you can stop and help stop or alleviate that behavior. Now, side note, I think it's a really great idea for all the volunteers, all the leaders to spread themselves out strategically, especially if you have small group students in a service. Sit by your small group students because you already have rapport with them. You already have a relationship with them. So all you got to do when they're talking or having inappropriate behavior is just kind of, hey, stop, because you have that relationship with them. Sometimes you have to go reseat yourself by somebody who isn't in your small group, that you don't quite have that relationship. I think it's always best to do it relationally. But that's reseat and then have that conversation after the service that this isn't going to happen anymore, because then the next R comes into place. So the 4th R is ring. Now, this is a little old school, but it's making a phone call to the parents, letting them know that this behavior you've already requested that, you've requested again and told them that was their final warning. You've done the reseating. You've had the conversation after the service now, and you've told them that if it continues to happen, that you were going to call the parents. And so this is a conversation with the parents going, this is what's been going on. We cannot keep doing this. This is total distraction. This is what's happening as a result of your son or daughter's, your student's behavior, and it cannot happen anymore. And quite frankly, if it continues to happen, and this is a high level, we're going to have to go to the next step in our process. And that's not a step that we want to take. So I'm going to ask you as a parent, have a conversation with your student, because this is a really big deal and we don't want to go further than this. We want your student and let them know you love their student. You want them to grow. You want them to learn. You want them to excel, and empathize. Like, I understand. Let them share what's going on. Maybe they have some insight into what's happening and why their student is behaving that way. I think that's really important to gain that insight so you can come alongside that student and maybe shape the conversation differently for the future so that this doesn't keep reoccurring. And then pray with the parents. I think that's really important, that you pray with them, let them know that you are on their team, that you want the best for their student, that you want them to grow, you love them, you care about them, you are in their corner, you want them to win. So do everything you can to help the parents know that this is not I don't like your kid and they're going to get kicked out if they keep going. That is not the situation. That is not how you handle that. You love on them and you come alongside them and you do whatever you can to help them. If they say, do you have any resources? If you don't have any resources, find them. Find resources for parents. Help them find a book that they can read with their student, a Bible study they can do, whatever. Maybe you have some resources already put together. Give parents resources to help them walk the journey with their students. You are not the student's parents. So you're not parenting. You are coming alongside and partnering with parents. Huge, huge difference, okay? And I also want to be clear, I really believe that it should be a staff member that makes the phone call, or it's a visit after church when they get picked up, whatever. But I think it should be a staff member. If it's a volunteer that has the relationship, a staff member and the volunteer come, it needs to be high level. And if you have a volunteer run ministry and you don't have a youth pastor, bring in a pastor or an elder to be part of the conversation. I think that's really, really wise to do. Okay, the 5th step, the 5th R, is remove. This is where you call the parents and you say, I know we talked about this before. You knew that if this behavior continued, that we would have to have this phone call. It's the phone call I've never wanted to make. I don't want to make. I'm so sad I'm having to make this phone call. But I think it's time to remove your student from the youth ministry for a season. You figure out what that season is. Maybe it's a couple of weeks, maybe it's a month, maybe it's whatever. You have to figure that out. But for a season. It's not permanent. It's not a permanent ban from church. That's not what this is. This is, it is the last resort, the absolute last resort in every way, shape, or form. You don't want to do this step. Nobody wants to do this step. But sometimes, in very rare occasions, it's needed. It's needed for the health of the whole ministry, but I also believe the health for that student. I know it was the right thing for Jared, and I know Sean wasn't removed from the student ministry, but he was removed from being on the worship team for a month. Sometimes that removal is where God does the work and the student recognizes, man, this was a big deal. Now, they're going to be angry and all of that, which is where the 6th R comes in. And it's remind. Remind them that you love them and care about them. And you're going to follow up with them. And follow up is key. Do not do the removal and then leave it there. You need to follow up with that student in whatever way you possibly can. Follow up with the parents if that's needed. Well, you're going to need to follow up with the parents, but if the student and the parents, if they want to be together, that's totally fine. But follow up is really important. Remind them how much you care about them. They're going to feel like, no, you kicked me out of church. You don't care about me. They're going to have all sorts of thoughts that are negative, but you need to remind them. And then this is a recently added on. I was talking about dealing with difficult students at a conference with volunteers and youth pastors, and somebody brought this up, and I thought this was a great R to add to the list, and that's restore. Restore that student. Get to the point where you restore them back into the ministry, where you help them walk that journey, and when they're ready to come back in and be part of the ministry again. I believe that is vital. I love that somebody said that, and I love that it has an R. So the overarching one is respect, and all of those fit under the respect umbrella. But those are the 7 steps, if you will, 8 R's with 7 steps that I think are so crucial for your ministry to have that down. Make sure everybody knows about it. Because you don't want to just spring something out and go, we've got a discipline process here. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. And it's you and then skip 3 or 4 steps. That doesn't make any sense. So make sure that you bring this. I would talk to your lead pastor about this. I would talk to your elder board. Make sure your staff knows that this is a big deal. I'm certain that if you brought this to your lead pastor, you brought this to your elders, whoever it is, leadership, that they would go, wow, this is really well thought through. And you don't need to say you got it from me.
You want to take the credit, you go right ahead.
Totally steal that, own it, put your logo on it, all of that. I don't need any accolades, anything for that. You just go for it and own that and see if they don't go, wow, this is really great. Thank you so much for bringing this. And then you walk with it. And they may actually have some suggestions to add to it. If you do have suggestions to add to it, I would love that. Now, that's my R's for this. Here's the deal. I would love to continue to just give you more information about youth ministry. I've been doing this for 30 years, and there's a video here. I think a video that will be really helpful for you in your journey. Take a look at that. Every week I'm back. All sorts of things, practical tips that you can implement into your ministry pretty much right away. I hope this has been encouraging. If it has been, if there's somebody you know that could use this, would you click the share button, text it to them, let them know, just say, hey, I saw this is really good, so that they can walk through this and have this for their ministry. I think it's vital for every ministry to have some sort of a disciplinary process that you walk through. All right. Next week, we got a great video on games. I'm super excited about this game that I want to teach you that will help you in your ministry. All right, until next time, see ya.